too.
Yeah, this is a lot more laid back.
Come on in, come on in. We're gonna shoot the breeze. Oh.
Too close to the mic, Gene. Keep going. You guys all ready? Okay. Restrooms are right around the corner, so if you need to go now's the time to go. Sorry. You can see there's some plants outside. Nature boy. All right, welcome to our Pixelated audio panel. I'm Brian, this is Gene, and we are a video game music podcast, retro games and kind of everything under the hood. We've been doing this show for about 4 years and still going strong. Recently, we brought Gene on as a full-time host in, like a month ago or so?
Like 3 episodes ago.
Yeah. So usually it's James and I who couldn't make it today because he's at a wedding. But we've been doing the show for 4 years, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. We have a lot of interesting guests on, composers. We just released episode 100, which we had the composer for Crash Bandicoot. So if you haven't listened to that, or if you haven't heard of our show, check that out. The last episode was a lot of fun. He gave us a lot of insight on the Crash Bandicoot series that none of us ever knew before. So, yeah, Sonic's ass. That's right. Yeah. So first of all, I want to say thank you. If you don't know Gene, you should give him a big hug afterwards because he did a lot of the work here at MAGWest to make this event possible. And so just want to say thank you very much, Mr. Gene.
Thank you. I did a lot of work behind the shadows to make sure that everybody is here and comfortable, and ran the jam space most of the event. So if you were here until 3 o'clock in the morning last night or the night before that, you're welcome. It was a lot of work, but I think it was pretty awesome.
And it's before noon, and we actually have our full panel here. So that means everybody, I guess didn't party too hard last night. Right?
I struggled, but I made it. I made it. It's good.
If you haven't listened to our panel last year at the first MAGWest, check that out. It was a little more on the technical side. We talked about the history of the Sega Genesis Master System, PSG versus the FM sound source. This year, we decided to take things a little bit different and make it more of a personal approach. So we've asked a ton of guests, ton of artists who have been performing at MAGWest this year to come and kind of share their experiences with video game music that may have touched their lives growing up and has kind of stayed with them throughout the years today. So why don't we go ahead and go down the list. We have a ton of people here, so this is going to be awesome.
Hello. So my name's Michaela. I am the violinist of Tetrimino. Yes, thank you. And I also play the automaton on the internet. I've been making videos on and off for about 8 years. And my first system was actually the Nintendo 64.
Wow.
Yeah, as a little baby. But yeah, actually it was at a McDonald's. There were these like Nintendo 64 demo booths. And so my first game is Kirby and the Crystal Shards. This is the shirt I'm wearing right now.
Awesome.
Hello, my name is Kris. I am part of Tetrimino with Michaela Mikulchu. I play the piano, keyboard, and I'm from New Jersey. My first system was the Nintendo 64. And my first video games were Mario Kart 64 and Diddy Kong Racing.
Hi, I'm Lex. I'm a rapper. There's nothing you can do about it. My first system was Game Boy Color. My first game was Pokemon Red.
Hey, I'm Nick. I'm from Birthday. I'm the keyboardist. And, I didn't get to have a system of my own until much later in my life, but I did have an Apple II, and I believe Centipede, that kind of stuff was on there,
Hi, I'm Ian. I'm also in Birthday. I play guitar. My first system was probably a Super Nintendo, and most likely it was a Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
I'm Pete. I'm a synthwave artist, Vectorhold. Been around for a while. Do all kinds of crazy stuff. Like to party. My first console was the Atari 2600 back in 1984. Kind of old.
Thank you. I was starting to feel like the oldest one here, and just help me out. Thank you.
Hi, my name's
E.N.Cowell. I'm the youngest one here. Just kidding. No, my name's E.N.Cowell. I am a producer. I am different from the other Ian here, which there has been many mix-ups. But yeah, I guess I'm a chiptune producer. I've done stuff for like Crash Faster, Strip Licker, DeLorean Overdrive, and I do my own personal stuff. So yeah, old school Game Boy artist. I guess my first console would probably technically be a Game Boy, like the 1987 version, the old school one. So
We talked yesterday, and you said it was the PlayStation.
okay,
You were drunk, so I don't know if that's true.
No, so if we're going technical, like I was thinking that at the time where it has to be like a home console or something like that, less of a portable. But yes, my parents didn't allow me to play any video games until I was like in high school, where my first video game console was a PlayStation. Yeah, it was a weird experience, and especially being in this group, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I feel like a little bit odd man out, but I'm glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Josh. I play guitar in Runaway 4. I'm from Vancouver, BC. That's in Canada, and yeah, I came out of the womb wanting to play games. Apparently. I was asking my dad on the way to preschool how to spell Nintendo for my birthday wish list. But the first console that I ever actually owned myself was a Game Boy Advance. And yeah, same issue of my parents not wanting me to play video games, but more on that later.
Hey, I'm Kris. I play keyboards and occasionally sing in the Runaway 4. I'm originally from Wales, but I've been in Canada for about 15 years now. I am also of the ilk where my parents wouldn't let us have consoles at home, but we did have a 286 as our first computer, and I remember there was a little game pack that they did buy that came with it, and I think some of the games on there was Outrun, Strider, a couple things like that. A lot of them didn't really work very well, but and then experiences of like playing Sega Mega Drive at friends' houses and Super Nintendo and stuff like that. The first console I actually owned was a Game Boy Color I bought for myself when I was 18. And the first home console was actually an Xbox 360. So.
Should we go over ourselves as well real quick? Brian, did you want to?
Yeah. Let's see. So Brian, Pixelated Audio, first console? We had a bunch of computers growing up, so I can't really pinpoint one. They all had like, my dad worked in the tech industry, and so like we had stuff coming in and out all the time. So I got to play on like, broken 286s and stuff. And this is before like software had all the bugs. It was always in the hardware that you had problems. So I played a lot of PC. We had a C64 for a little while, an Amiga, NES. My dad was into games for a little bit, but kind of like you were saying, we weren't really allowed to play games growing up much. It was like you play outside first, and then when you're done and exhausted, then you can come inside and play some games. So at least as a kid, I don't know how it was for everybody, but at least at my house, we were made to go outside. So I think that even drove me. When you can't have something, you want it more. So that made me want to play games even more and more and more growing up.
And I'm Gene, also on Pixelated Audio. My first system was the NES. My parents got swept up in Nintendo fever. So if you've got an old relative that's like, oh, what's that Nintendo thing you got over there? It was because of the original NES. They were like, check this out. And then they lost interest like 5 minutes later. So the kids, my sister and I, just ended up playing it pretty much exclusively. My mom played a little bit of Dr. Mario. My dad played Super Mario Brothers. And it's like, I'm good. And that was sort of the end of that.
All right, so everybody here has picked a track for us to play today and listen to and kind of share. So we'll listen to each track maybe like a minute. I think we got a lot of people, so we don't have a ton of time, but we'll listen to like a minute of it, and maybe you guys can share your experiences with that. And if anybody wants to jump in and ride the train a little bit, go ahead. This is a very loose and lax panel. So why don't we just start down the list? Gene, what do you think? Start here? Okay. So what track did you bring first today?
So I chose the Animal Crossing from GameCube, 8 p.m.
All right. So let's take a listen real quick. All right, so that was 8 p.m. from Animal Crossing on the GameCube. Awesome. Tell us about this track.
So, so when I was around middle school playing the GameCube, after practicing tennis and practicing music and doing homework, I would hop on to Animal Crossing and, talk to the villagers, play around, essentially building my house, making it my ideal place to live in. But that was always around 8 p.m. And when I was listening to the music, so for Animal Crossing, there's several motifs, but one of them is, I guess I'll just hum it, but bum 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 bum. And another one is bum 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 bum. Something like that. So what was cool about 8 p.m. as a kid, I was transcribing this one, and I was like, wow, both the motifs are kind of stacked on top of each other, and that's something I didn't really think about, musically, could be done. And it was also a little bit canonic, and also Animal Crossing has really strange instrumentation. Sometimes they use cat meows as part of their traditional melodies. And for this one in particular is this whirly tube. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's literally a tube that you just spin around and goes wee 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 wee. So that's the instrument. I mean, it's programmed, of course, but that was the main melodic instrument leading it. And I'm like, that's so bizarre. I love it. It's quirky, so it's just very prominent memory for me. It also taught me to just, have fun with music. It doesn't have to be super serious. It could be really bizarre and still be good. And also, I guess, could I also talk about the composer of it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so Kazumi Totaka, he personally is one of my favorite composers because he writes really catchy tunes. And if you think about Animal Crossing, I mean, who's played Animal Crossing? Sorry, raise of hands? Cool, yeah, okay.
I've never played Animal Crossing.
Okay, so for those...
You're missing out, man.
Okay,
There's plenty of those tabloid or typhoid or whatever things to dig for.
Yeah, I guess I should probably talk about what Animal Crossing is. So it's essentially you being this character going into this town full of animals or anamorphic. Oh, sorry, anthropomorphic creatures, and you're introduced by a character named Tom Nook, and he's this raccoon who's like, "Hey, I'll sell you this house, but you're gonna be in debt, and you're gonna have to pay this debt back." So, how you get? Yes, exactly. It's a real life simulator, and why would I want to play that? But it's more quirky and fun, and You get to interact with your neighbors. You get to help them out with tasks. You can raise bells, which is the money currency there. And yeah, essentially you get out of debt, or so you think. Because Tom knows, like, hey, you can upgrade your house. You can build it up to be even bigger.
This guy's starting to sound like a mob boss.
So anyways, that's the premise of the game. And each hour they have a different tune. And I think what's fascinating about Totaka is he's written music that's literally a minute each and loops it. And if you're playing throughout the game, that's an hour's worth of music, but in a minute, and you're listening to it over and over and over again, and yet it never really gets tiring. If anything, it really grows on you, and it becomes more memorable. So I think what's fascinating is, yeah, again, each hour, it's like literally a minute, looped 60 times. If you guys know the song Meat Channel, anyone?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's the one who composed that, so catchy tune. Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins, he has this main melody, it's like bum, 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 bum. That one. It's everywhere throughout the song. It's also just arranged in different styles, and it's just like never gets old. So I just want to shout out to Totaka.
I'm like
there.
humming that song in my head now.
Yeah,
it's gonna stay in there the
There's
rest of the
different-
day.
Yeah, there's different rhythms like
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
yeah. And some of them there's different rhythms like bum, 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 bum. Scary. It's like that's the spooky one, right? And then there's like a little waltz one. Bum, 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 bum. So it's just like, yeah, there's different styles, but it just never gets old.
I think one of the cool things about Animal Crossing as well is because it plays in real time, like with the actual clock. So
Yes.
you literally have a different tune for each hour of the real day. So it's kind of, you dip into it, in the evening or in the morning or whatever, and it kind of gives you music that gives you a feeling that actually matches the day that you're having as well
Yeah, I
as the day
totally
in the
forgot. It's
game.
real time. So yeah, within the hour, it's like every minute is literally real time minute.
But
That's
see,
why I'm so
that made it so frustrating to play as a kid because you were in school from like 8 to 4 or whatever, 5 anyway, and so you'd miss that window to catch the right fish at noon or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That used to make me
That's-
so mad, and I wanted to
where
stay
my
home sick and stuff
weekends-
just for that.
That's where my weekends went.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and move on to our next guest? What do you got for us today?
Okay, so the track that I picked is from Diddy Kong Racing. It's called Pirate Lagoon.
Okay, I think this is the right track.
So yeah, basically I grew up playing, like I mentioned earlier, Mario Kart 64 and Diddy Kong Racing. Now, okay, a show of hands, who prefers Mario Kart 64? Okay, what about Diddy Kong Racing? Well, okay, I like both games, but I guess I grew up more on Diddy Kong Racing because there's the story mode. So that's why I liked it more.
I don't remember the story mode either. What? Explain, please explain.
You collect the balloons. You
Oh,
gotta
that's
race
right.
Whiz
Yeah,
Pig
there was like all the
and-
different areas and stuff, and you could. And then the whole point was to get up to defeat Whizpig. It was a racing game with a real story.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
Get rid
right.
of Whizpig, the cheater. He starts ahead of you.
The cheater.
Yeah, so I guess, I like the music from both games, but I think I resonated more with Diddy Kong Racing because, like, with that track, I play piano, so that track used piano sounds. And then I guess it relates to the kind of music that I write with Tetrimino. And there's a lot of blues riffs that they use there, and that kind of clicked with me. I'm like, oh, I like to try to write music that kind of sounds like that. So I think that's why I chose that track to talk about.
So the next time we listen to like a Tetrimino album, we have to like listen for all the Diddy Kong nuances in the
I
music
guess
there.
So. Yeah,
Little Easter eggs.
Yeah, we write like, I guess we write like a lot of stuff. I think you could join in if you want to.
Yeah, I'll just say that just listening to this, I didn't really grow up with Diddy Kong Racing too much. I was more of Mario Kart 64, but I could really tell your style from like being somewhat inspired from this track. Like I could see some of the riffs already. Like I was just like, oh yeah, Kris does that sometimes in his solos.
So I was actually compiling a lot of the tracks, getting all the artist stuff, and all of the tracks sent. I'm like, yeah, okay, I can tell based on the person who sent this. This is like where their music started, pretty much. Like not all the time, but some of them was very clear influences. So it was really kind of fun for me to kind of see those roots.
All right, moving on, Lex.
Yeah. So I'm probably the least technically, aware of like VGM of like all of you in the panel, but I'm going to guess that this is probably the most obscure pick on the thing.
It's pretty obscure.
It's pretty obscure. I think play Cemetery.
Cemetery.
Do you
That's
have
the
it
one
on
I
there?
don't have.
Oh.
Yeah, I have the title, the login title.
You can play the login title.
Okay, we'll play the login title. I don't have internet, so I can't get to
That's
that one
totally
right now.
fine. Yeah. We're good. So this song, tell me what the technical name of this is, but it was an internet game that I played when I was like preteen, or 8, 9, 10 years old, 11 years old. But it was like an internet game where everyone would like connect and join on the server, and then everyone would play over the internet. What is that called?
Like what is the game called?
No. Like the type of game.
Like a multi.
Browser-based MMO. There we go. Okay, browser-based MMO. Does anyone recognize this, first of all?
Nope.
Normies. Just kidding. This is from a Korean browser-based MMO called Crazy Arcade. It is I won't say a knockoff of Bomberman, but it is inspired a lot by Bomberman. But it uses water balloons instead of bombs. It's super cute, and I was obsessed with being super competitive over it, when I was younger. I used to play a lot of video games when I was younger, just like preteens. I think I ran out of time to play a whole bunch of video games when I entered middle school and high school, homework kid, and I had to, basically put that on the back burner. But I was super competitive over this game for a really long time, and I think this game, I would say, built this competitive spirit of me having to get better at things, because there was a, how do you say it, level tracker for every account. Like you would log in, like this is the login screen, and then you would log in, and then every single different screen had different types of
leaderboards
music.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you log in, you have your avatar, and then there's you have a badge that shows what level you are on the side. And so it's really obvious whenever you join a group, a room to play a game, people can tell what level you are, right there. And people can tell whether you're a bronze, gold medal, and then there's stripes and stuff. And then depending on how much you played and how many games you won, you increased in level, obviously, for everyone to see. And the higher level you got, the more advanced rooms you could join, because you would be limited to joining the beginner rooms if you had a bronze medal. And so I became obsessed with getting my stripes, literally getting my stripes on that game. But yeah,
that's how they hook you.
Exactly. Obscure MMORPG, Crazy Arcade, and it was from Korea, but because I grew up in Taiwan, there was just an infiltration of Korean media in general, and basically everyone I played with was Taiwanese. I think it was a Taiwanese server. But yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
There's also a
Thanks.
track in there
This is a good
called
one.
Cemetery that I sent you, and it was the cemetery level, and I wish I could have played it, but that's okay. It's legit a hip hop beat, and it's supposed to be scary, but I don't actually think it's scary. It's more badass. And it's a hip hop beat, and it just sticks in my head because
We can put that one in post. Hip hop
Okay,
beat,
cool.
Lex makes sense.
yeah. Just stick it in there. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. Anyway, that's me.
Sorry, really quick. What console was that again?
Your laptop, computer, or for me, my
Sick.
super slow desktop.
All right.
Yeah,
all right,
from
okay,
2002, that I owned in Taiwan, just this massive, dumb CPU.
So I think the game actually came out in the U.S. too at some
Really?
point. Yeah, I was looking at the Wikipedia page because I was really curious. I'd never heard of it, and I think
Obscure.
but I think even though it was released here, I don't think anybody really knew of it because by then it was probably already past its hype period or whatever.
Yeah, I wrote it on its hype, so.
Yeah. Nice. You knew it when it was cool.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks for sharing. Let's move on to our next panelist. What do you got for us?
So this is from Star Control 2. Not that obscure, I guess, but it's an old PC game that my friends and I used to play. And it's kind of I didn't know this until a few months ago when I started playing Mass Effect for the first time. I have this backlog of 15 years of games that I haven't played because I had a kid and haven't had time to play games, and so finally got to Mass Effect, and yeah, it's a similar game to that, but the 2D kind of 16-bit version, and each race had its own theme, and you just go explore and mine planets and find these different races, and so I picked the one that I didn't really like this music at the time, but it got stuck in my head, and for years it just plays constantly over and over
the best.
and over again. So yeah, it's the Pkunk theme.
All right, let's take a listen.
like it.
Now that is stuck in everybody's head. Thanks.
So if you ever see me and you're like, wow, that guy looks stressed, but he's just standing there. That's why.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this game was like, I don't know. Aside from just the fact that I could go over to my friend's house where he had the better computer and we could play this game, and it was like, VGA graphics, 256 colors, and it was amazing. Like, and it had this soundtrack that actually sounded good through, speakers. It wasn't like a MIDI thing, which or like ad-lib, which I now I love ad-lib, but at the time I was like, oh, come on, I don't need to hear wow, wow. Well, I'm trying, that's not a trumpet. But like, this is actual like 8-bit samples, and I don't know if anyone knows about the demo scene or the tracker scene like in the early 90s, but
I love you for saying that. Yeah, I'm all about that.
So
Got you.
at the time, I wanted to have a way to write music and do like my piano teacher did with his MIDI studio. It is thousands and thousands of dollars of gear. And this was a way to have a sampler on a computer with some program in DOS that like these guys from, Finland? The Future Crew guys wrote. It was just a tracker. And you put in these hexadecimal numbers and it triggers these samples. And you can have, you can record whatever you want into the computer and play it back, and it's your music, get samples from other people's stuff. And, so it just opened up this whole creative world to me where I could have, things that sounded like instruments and not have to go out and buy, $10,000 worth of stuff that I couldn't afford. I mean, I could do it on my like hand-me-down, self-assembled piece of crap computer too, and it was amazing. And the game was good too, of course. But, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Hey, I'm Ian, and the song that I chose was "In the Wind" from Gradius 3 on the Super Nintendo.
I just want to stop you right there. I'm Ian.
You're Ian. I'm Ian.
I'm letter E, and then N, and then Cowell. And this gentleman is E.N.Cowell.
We're not the same person.
We are not. It's been an ordeal.
You look kind of similar.
I brought them.
Wait, do we?
I brought them both on this panel. I didn't tell them they were each going to be here, so I knew this was going to happen.
I just want to say, I'm glad we both have glistening pecs and strong muscles, and that this is a podcast, so that we can all see that this is actual true fact. Yeah.
It is nice to look over and look into the mirror and see a true vision of myself.
Yeah. I just want to say that we are gods. We are nice.
There's an attraction, and I feel it. I think everyone else in this room feels it.
I appreciate it, yeah. We should do an Ian versus Ian, or a even Ian collab.
We have a mixtape coming next week.
Check it out on
Announcement.
SoundCloud. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Fire.
Is it going to be under E.N.Cowell or E.N.Cowell?
We haven't worked that out. We're going to get to the split sheet and figure it
Yeah,
out.
we're getting to it. No, we'll
Google,
get there.
Google Docs ready for it.
Yeah. Oh, we got a lot of Google Docs ready for this.
What's your song, Ian?
Before we were infatuated with each other, it's In the Wind from Gradius 3, but the Super Nintendo version.
Gotcha.
Yes.
the Wind. That's a great song. If anyone's heard Nick and I perform before, we're really into strong melodies. And that song has a really, really strong melody to it. It's also really stressful at the same time, too, which goes with the... Has anyone here played Gradius at all?
I played the hell out of it, yeah.
I know you're all familiar with the ship from Gradius, Vic Viper.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We're wearing the shirts down here. Yeah.
so this is really perfect Jeepers Creepers. You know?
Yeah.
No, I grew up in a Super Nintendo household. I was raised with my grandparents, and they both played video games quite a bit. And they bought Gradius, and they hated it because they were not good at it. And I didn't know that speedrunning existed yet in the 90s, or even was a culture at the time. But does anyone know about Twin Galaxies?
Yep.
So I used to get a little hi-8 cassette tape and record myself playing that game and trying to get the best score I could so that I'd end up in the newsletter or whatever forum they might have had at the time. So, yeah, really like that entire soundtrack. It has a lot of just great melodies on it. Really, really good frantic percussion. But yeah, I don't know. It's that track in particular stands out most of all the other ones in the soundtrack. It's been arranged a lot of different times, and people have gone out and done like Cassiopeia-esque kind of like fusion covers of it. But that Super Nintendo version is like the pinnacle for me.
I just want to say your grandparents are awesome. Mine didn't have like any desire or probably ever touch anything like electronic in their lifetimes. So the fact that they were even playing Gradius, even if they didn't like it, they get a free pass. That's pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, no,
That's
they would
Gradius?
constantly buy JRPGs and then get mad when they realized there was a turn-based battle system.
I'm not going to let you go by without talking about the story you told me about your grandpa and Zelda. 'Cause
Oh,
we
yeah.
need to hear this.
So my grandfather worked at a refinery as an engineer, so he was working graveyard in a lab pretending to actually work. So he and his coworker would make their own strategy guides, so they'd save money from actually giving the strategy guide people money. So he would take grid paper and then just play the game and through trial and error make his own maps and have little legends to where certain enemies were and treasures. So he's like the precursor to GameFAQs.com, like poorly formatted but like really good information. And my grandmother would stay up really late at night playing Super Metroid and cussing and then saying that she didn't cuss. But also very problematic. She thought the Chozos were Native Americans or indigenous people. And I was like, no, these are bird people, aliens. But she couldn't be swayed. So just know that even though it can be cool to have grandparents who game, there can also be issues with generation gaps.
Thank you very much.
What's up, guys? I'm Vectorhold. The track I chose was Final Takeoff 2, Afterburner. So this all began back like in the late 80s at like a Shakey's Pizza. They had an Afterburner cabinet. And I always loved flight simulators, and I still do. I have a huge setup at home. I always stuck with it for years. But back when I was a kid, I heard that song in the game, and at the same time I acquired an Amiga 500, and I started playing games on that. But I became more obsessed with the music production and quality on the computer itself. So I didn't know. I wanted to know how to make this music, but I wasn't sure. So pre-internet, there was these bulletin board services where you had to dial up on your computer, the little 2400 baud modem, and there was these BBS. There was these people up there, and it was mostly for trading pirated software. And you would meet up with people once a week at like a round table, and you got together trading stuff. So I met some people who had this Pro Tracker software, and it was a bitch to make music on that thing if you didn't know what you were doing. It was all sample based. You had like a DX7 keyboard and hit one note, and you'd have to sample that, and you'd have to work with that in a tracker system. And it was just like a mathematical calculator that was like just impossible to understand. But once you learned it and you got a hang of it, it was all good from there. But I started becoming more obsessed with the music software, DAWs back then, and then kind of still played games and everything. But what I would do is I would make these demos on my own, and then I would, I had like a little 4-track Tascam Porta 7 disc, not just a tape player thing, and I would make my own demos, and I'd hand them around to high school and be like, oh, this is what I do. I make this music. Some people were into it, some people weren't, and it's 1991. It's just like it wasn't. All these people that went to high school were like listening to Rush and Van Halen, so it's like they're not into like this chippy tune music. And so a friend of mine said, you could bump that up a level. You could go to a recording studio, and actually you could put that through tube amps, and you could really like get the production up really high and EQ it. And so that's what I started doing, and then from there I've made electronic music ever since, and it's like taken me to some pretty cool places and some good opportunities.
A lot of people into the Pro Tracker stuff. I'm kind of surprised. That kind of brings me back to my roots back way long time ago.
Yeah, I still use it.
You still use
the Amiga 500 for a lot of stuff, yeah.
And they have a new version of Pro Tracker too that runs natively. Well, it's Pro Tracker, like kind of a rehash of Pro Tracker that runs on modern computers as well. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, there's a ton of Sunvox is out there. That's completely free.
I use a Schism Tracker on the Mac.
Yeah, there's tons of resources out there. If people want to, anybody can try it. It's just if you have like that willing to want to make it happen and do anything you can to make it happen, you can make it happen.
Yeah. And the mod archive is still up, so you can just go download stuff and rip some samples,
Yeah, for those who have never used a tracker, it's basically a musical spreadsheet. But what's really cool about it is you load the songs in as music data. So you can say, oh, I really love this song. It sounds really cool. You can open it up and literally see what's going on. So you're like, I'm going to steal these samples, and I'm also going to steal all these patterns and then just throw it in my track, change a few notes, and But it's really, actually, it was a really interesting learning tool for me. I actually went in, and it was probably my first experience understanding how like the actual notes go together to make the melodies. Like, I could play things by ear, but seeing the entire line written out, it was like, whoa, this is so much easier than trying to do it by hand.
Now, they had a comment section too. I remember it's like, "Don't rip our samples." Or
yeah.
Yeah, they literally there's like usually a section on the top where it's actually you can look at the names of samples, and because they didn't have an actual thing, they would put the name of their sample as "Don't steal my sample" and things like that over and over, or like the data or just like information about the stuff
about the group or whatever. It gives me an opportunity to plug my other podcast, which is called the Impulse Project, which is a demo scene music podcast. And we talk about this trackers and all the software and stuff. Put a lot there. Take a listen.
Bruh, I want in on that. Let's talk later. Let's do this.
Well, you're talking now. You're up.
Oh, no. Okay.
Hey, guys, it's E.N.Cowell again. The real E.N.Cowell.
6th or 7th? I don't know. Cool. So I actually sent in a few tracks. I'm not sure which one we're going to go to, but throw it on any of them. I don't I don't. I believe, as the kids say, YOLO.
Let's see here. Take your pick. I got them all.
Oh, Jesus.
From
Okay.
Alicia Dragoon.
Definitely Alicia Dragoon is where we should go. I don't know. Do you have the longer, like, more dramatic one?
Which
Because I'm an
Priest?
edgelord, for real?
Maybe this one. Saw like people walking by and they're like, "What the hell are you guys listening to?"
Yeah, no.
It's like dead silent in there, and you got that music on.
Yeah, no. Well, okay. So the thing about video game music, it tends to be like super upbeat because they want you to be super into it and like feel like you're vibing with the game. And for me, Alicia Dragoon was one of those things. I don't know if you guys know anything about this game at all.
We did a whole episode on it, so if you want to know
Yeah.
more about it, you can check it out.
Definitely. Just a quick rundown. It's a platformer where you control an anime girl who's badass, and she shoots lightning, but you actually don't get to control the lightning, so it's all about resource management and things like that. I grew up with this game as a child. I wasn't allowed video games, but I would go to my cousin's place out in San Jose, and they had a Sega Genesis. So, like, I have a severe love for that console. Like, it's even though I've never owned one until I was an adult. It was one of the things that kind of like ingrained in me. But I believe Gynax did like some of the animation and stuff like that. And I actually do not know who made the music, but one of the things that sticks out to me from that is it's very cinematic. It's very like almost over the top, like doom and gloom, but that at the same time kind of like science-y and like cool because of the FM synthesis from that console, which I'm super engaged in. Like I love FM synthesis. I'm a huge synth nerd, so like that's kind of my jam.
It's a really good soundtrack. The whole game has incredible music.
It's gorgeous. It has like a weird Celtic kind of feel to it. On top of that, it's like mixed with like it's just good sound design. Even I personally really like some of the Foley kind of things that they were doing for like I forget when there's a guy that teleports in, and it's like wow. No, like that is the saddest representation I've ever made of that actual thing. But yeah, there's a lot of really great things to that game. Besides being like, it was kind of like growing up, I didn't know anybody else who's ever played that game, and it wasn't until my adulthood that I was able to track it down and play it again. And so I was a kid, so I couldn't beat the first level. So it wasn't until then I got to listen to the rest of the soundtrack outside of the menu screen where you had to be like, oh, okay, let's do a sound test. Okay, it's in stereo. Oh, okay. Anyways, yeah, no, it's that game is near and dear to my heart, and I think it kind of set up a lot of things because also, I think we should chill because I'm definitely really into trackers and the Amiga 500 and samples and that literally. Long story short, I've been down a long chiptune demo scene path from like early 2000s and been involved in that. But yeah. Anyways, that was kind of a little ramble.
The whole soundtrack is really, really good.
Yeah.
It's a blast to listen to. We actually talked to Kasatani from Makano Associates, the sound studio that put together the soundtrack for Alicia Dragoon, and they had some really good stuff to say about the composition side of it. So check out the episode.
Definitely.
It's a fantastic soundtrack, and the game is actually a blast too. So it's not just like crappy game, great music. It's kind of the whole package.
Yeah, well, I think it like the precursor to it was like something. It was like Thexter or something like that. They like it. There was a more 8-bit computer-based game that was kind of the precursor to how the gameplay. My friend Lewis, who we used to write music with for DeLorean Overdrive. Yeah,
He was on the panel with us last year, actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Louis
I didn't even
Gorenfeld?
know.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. Okay, yeah. No, so he's excellent, and he has a YouTube channel where it's called Cool and Unusual Video Games, where he chatted out about Alicia Dragoon a lot, and like I actually ended up watching that, I learned that okay, this is actually based off of the gameplay because there's no real like way to control shooting your lightning bolts. You're like this anime chick, and you're like, blah, and you shoot like lightning bolts, and it would blast the full screen, but you had a limited bar of energy. So like so it really, because you can't actually control where you're shooting, it was more about management and like, okay, we constantly have enemies coming. Oh, and you also had like a familiar and things like that. Like a dragon or like different animals that you can
Thing that walks around, yeah.
It was I don't know. Yeah. I love that game. I love that game. Anyways, yeah. That's my spiel.
Thanks for bringing that track on. That's awesome.
No, it's cool. I'm glad because like a lot of things are like super upbeat and like I feel like it's a nice mix up,
Totally.
Cool.
All right. Well, the track I chose, I'm just going to bring this up a little bit, was from Super Mario RPG, and it is Weapons Factory.
signature is that? Excuse me.
It's technically
13.8.
what?
It's 13.8.
Oh my! I knew it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
I
like,
remember
it must be a
counting
compound
that.
because I was
and
like,
you cut it off right before the anvil solo.
I'm gonna have to try and rap to a 13/8 beat. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a preamble, a little bit of a backstory for this track. So as we talked about, my parents didn't really want me having video games. My dad particularly. So if he caught me like playing video games on like our family computer or something, he'd be like, "Hey, get out of there!" But thankfully, my next door neighbor was spoiled rotten with them. So I would just go over to his house, and sometimes he would let me like borrow his Game Boy and play Pokemon, and I would just like hide it under my pillow or something. But then, so Mario RPG came out around the same time that the N64 came out. So he got the new system, and he's like, "Hey, I'm not using this. If you want to like play some games, you can like take it over." And he had like this little mini TV as well, and I had like a raised bed that was like built into the room, and I had this nice little cubby underneath that was kind of hidden. And so I went to all the effort as a child. By the way, I'm probably like 11 or 12 of hiding the Super Nintendo.
You're 11 or 12 now.
Did you hear my past tense, bro? All right, was 11 or 12. So I hid this mini TV, the console, and the games and everything under my bed, and then I would get up at night after bedtime and just like play and try to keep the volume really low to beat this game. And so you can just like imagining me in like the dead of night and like my greatest moment of defiance, just like playing video games, all bleary-eyed and stuff. And this track is from the final boss layer, and it's grungy, sludgy, it's industrial, and it's progressive as so I think that set a precedent on me early on to like get into it, and it just kind of like. Yeah, the music just kind of captured that moment and that feeling for me of like, this is where I am. I'm going to charge right in and defeat the final boss, and I'm not going to do what you tell me, whatever the raging against the machines say. Yeah.
As soon as you hear the door open and your dad walk through the door, I bet you this music has a whole new vibe to it. Terrifying.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and we've played that live. That's really fun to do the anvil solo in 13/8. Yeah.
Yeah, I have fun counting in that one for the solo or when I come back in with the keys.
Don't use a real anvil.
We did look into using a real anvil, but instead I found an anvil patch and then have a little wireless Bluetooth trigger that we taped onto a hammer so that Josh can run out into the audience and hit people, and it triggers the sound. Triggers the sound from my computer. Awesome. Yeah, it's really fun.
Acceptable, yes.
Yeah. That's why if you look on Facebook or something, I think I'm called Wireless Anvil Technician or something like that. So my track, do you have LBA's theme there?
Part of me was just waiting for an anvil solo. To pop in there.
That's a lot more chill. Have any of you ever heard of this game, Little Big Adventure? It was released in North America as Relentless Twinson's Adventure by Activision in 1994 on CD-ROM.
My birth year.
Let it go.
So, as I mentioned previously, we didn't have consoles growing up. I do have a love for other aspects of video game music because my brother and I used to go to a childminder after school, and they had a Sega Mega Drive, which I later learned was called the Genesis over here, and we'd play like Sonic 2 and stuff. So I definitely have a lot of love for that aspect of things and stuff that I played on people's Game Boys and whatever. But for me and my brother, we had our computer at home, and we had either like very limited games that got bought as birthday presents or stuff like that, and then we had stuff that we got from magazines. So it started out in the days of getting magazine with a floppy disk on the front that had a bunch of demos or something on it, or shareware, so like all like Commander Keen and all those kind of things that play. And then, of course, that eventually became cover CDs. And this game was one that looked really interesting. So at the time, like, it kind of had it's developed by a French company called Adeline Software, and there were people that are involved in a game called Alone in the Dark before that. And they were trying to push the limits of what you could do graphically. So it was like super VGA, higher resolution, early days of trying to get 3D effects going before there were like 3D graphics cards and stuff like that. So this game, I remember reading about it in the magazine, and then they had the demo on the CD on the cover. And so it's kind of, you play from an isometric perspective. It's an adventure game. You're controlling your character going through this world, picking up items, talking to people, figuring out what to do. You start out in kind of a mental asylum and have to break out. It's got some very weird, bizarre French graphics and characters and stuff. But the things that blew me away was, so it's the game's on the CD. You start out, the first thing you hear is this music as the opening like CGI animatic thing is playing. And you're kind of like, oh wow, this is kind of an epic story. This tune feels like the start of something big. And then when I eventually got the game, one of the thing that blew me away was that the CD actually had the music as audio tracks on the CD. So you could put it in a CD player and play through the soundtrack. And when you were playing the game, there were like MIDI versions of parts of the various tracks that it would play in little snippets. And then you'd get to an area where it would trigger like one of the CD audio tracks, and you'd be like, okay, yeah, this is the good stuff. And it was like, it's well composed. This guy, Philippe Vacher, who did the soundtrack for it and for the sequel, who clearly, like, I was coming from a classical piano whatever background, so I kind of had an appreciation for that style of music and orchestral and everything else. So it's like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. He's writing interesting melodies. He's got his orchestration and everything. This stuff could be played by real musicians on real instruments if they had the means to do it, but instead it was just high quality MIDI stuff that was put together in a studio. But the neat thing about it, I think, as far as game music goes, like a lot of the console stuff that I was playing was your classic, here's a short loop that you're going to hear again and again and again and again because this is the limitations of the system or whatever. And yeah, like upbeat stuff that's trying to keep you engaged with the game. This game is very slow paced. If you try and play it now, you have to find a version where they fixed all the horrific control things that were wrong with the original version. Like, I don't know why they made some of these decisions. It's like borderline unplayable. I still have love for it, but still the music was all about building this atmosphere. So you have like a track like that's full of kind of adventure and optimism, and then there are tracks that are like, oh, here you are in the capital of the dictatorship. Here's this oppressive music that's going to make you feel stressed out, or here you are exploring the desert and there's all these crazy sounds that really make really fit the environment. And it just really kind of stuck with me, partly because I was able to put it in my CD player and just listen to it outside of the context of the game, which made me love it as music by itself, but also having the context of this story and all the adventure and stuff that went along. It kind of just really, it was really made me have an appreciation for game music as being a legitimate genre of music, because you can do anything that you want with it.
I agree. I think that's why we do this podcast. That's why we're all kind of here today, right? You develop this appreciation for game audio, not only just as you listen to it, but the more you know about the history and the context of how it was made, when it was made, all those factors. It's not just the notes. It's everything that goes into it, I think, is where that appreciation level just kind of skyrockets. And I'm sure that's the truth for everybody here. So pretty awesome. Thanks for sharing.
I mean, the fact that it didn't take me all that much effort to get like 11 people up here to be talking about this, and you're all musicians, and it's just, like, that's amazing. I mean, that's why MAGWest happened and MAGFest, the larger thing. I think a lot of us probably felt this way when we were kids. It's like, does anybody else like do this? Like, sit there, like, seriously, like, we're listening to this music. Everybody's talking about their favorite Green Day or whatever album, and it's like, oh, well, what about? Oh, I'm just not going to talk about that.
Yeah, and the other thing is too, like we say, everybody perform and stuff like that. But the whole point of this panel was to kind of talk to each other about it, right? Because everybody's performing, everybody's busy. There's a lot going on. It's a really frantic event. But sit down for an hour, tell us some kind of personal history, and I think we know each other a little bit better now. And so, just want to thank everybody for coming and taking the time to join the panel today. Still want to leave a little bit of time for some Q&A for the guests. But just, again, want to say thank you, everybody, for showing up. A lot of great music, and, yeah, had a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Well, should we open it up to a couple questions?
All right, so does anybody in the audience have a few questions? I mean, it can be about what we've talked about or just in general questions for the musicians. I mean, if you've seen their amazing sets, just, come up and ask about the bands or whatever. Just come on up. We stole this mic from down there, so you're going to have to take it from us. But please, any, hands raised? Yeah, come on up.
Hi, talented people. Thank you for doing this. I love video game music. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. But I wanted to know what all of you, or whoever wants to at least, say, what do you think humorous music has to do, and what place humorous music has here in the video game music community?
I think it just kind of freshens things up a little bit, I mean, I think we've been talking a lot about things that are peppy and yeah, like trying to keep you engaged. But I mean, like, like if you're creating an adventure game or like a silly game like Parodius or something like that, like humorous music kind of fits the vibe. So, on a full spectrum of emotional expression in music, you want to be able to be inclusive of everything.
I think there's plenty of video game cover bands that often have like lyricists, or they'll adapt like video game music to include lyrics, and a lot of the times those lyrics are parodical or comedic in nature. Now, what I do is slightly comedic in a lot of situations. Like, I'll write ridiculous like rap bars and lyrics and stuff. I mean, I really think it's just another type of thing. I mean, like, video game music is not just like chiptune or like video game heavy metal cover bands. It's also like, obviously, like, soul, Super Soul Bros cover band style, video game hip hop, a variety of different offshoots of, the initial chiptune thing that was on, the initial thing that we were inspired by listening to early in our lives. And really, when things get, evolved, when things kind of extend beyond their offshoot, it can take on a variety of different forms. And I think if people want to make that, like, bring comedy music, I think it's a really good fit. I don't know. People like that. It's fun.
I think that there's a place for some Frank Zappa-esque kind of, maybe Danny Elfman, like using the little humorous motifs over this super dark kind of stuff. And I think definitely thematically, when we're trying to write songs with lyrics, we take the the darker tone and like overlay it with some of the concepts from video games that have to do with some of the more messed up stuff. Like, not a video game example, but like, does the transporter kill you in Star Trek? Like, there's all these unanswered questions from our favorite games that have a happy tone, but might be a darker side, So I think it provides a nice contrast or dichotomy, if you will.
video games, in at least in my perspective, are like, it's almost the perfect art form, in the sense that you are combining interactive control, you are combining video, you're combining audio. It's all the senses that you can like experience into one thing.
We'll get smell eventually.
Yeah, well, we'll get smell. Yeah. Eating, taste, flavor. Yeah. Well, there's some
I
sense.
don't know if I want smell. Just putting it out there.
Yeah. So the benefit of this medium is the fact that like you are really open to giving people a tangential like experience, you know, and that includes all things like humorous moments, serious moments, and things like that. So like I think in particular it ties kind of into like how it really does bring out like an experience depending on what the situation calls for. Like it's kind of like a movie, but like extra. So I think things like humor in music can actually be like a beautiful like payoff and like addition to these things. I don't know.
I'm a big fan of funny games. Grew up on the PC playing LucasArts and Monkey Island and Day of Tentacle and stuff like that. And I particularly loved as a musician when music was part of that fun. So like Monkey Island's got like the pirate song where if you guys played it, where you're trying to get the pirates to stop singing, but everything that you say they keep rhyming and incorporating it into the song, and then you eventually stop it by saying, "We'll surely avoid scurvy if we all eat an orange." And then the pirates, and then you feel like it's kind of guilty because they stop doing their song. But stuff like that's amazing. I've wanted to cover that for ages. And then like games where that are just going completely out there. So Neverhood has a fantastic, insane soundtrack that you listen to it and you're just like, what did they do? Did they lock this guy in a room for 6 months with a guitar and just let him go completely insane and record stuff? It's really awesome. But I love when like as a musician, when musicians do when composers or sound designers do things that are musically funny. So yeah, like the Danny Elfman style, like the little motifs and funny things. But one of my favorite examples recently, which just first time I noticed it made me laugh, was on the Wii U, Paper Mario Color Splash, which has got a really fun soundtrack. I know people sort of disparage the more recent Paper Mario games for some gameplay aspects. One of the hilarious things is there's the battle music, which is really fun and peppy. But if you go into the battle and your health is low, it's all like they've like somebody is mashing on the pitch bend wheel for the entire thing. So it basically sounds like it's being played on kazoos, and it just like so every version of different battle tracks has got this like horrifically out of tune version as well. And it's just like and Paper Mario himself is all like a little bit crumpled and scuffed and worse for wear. And like musically, that's just like. As a sound design thing, it's fantastic. It conveys something about the feeling of what you're doing in that game, and it makes you laugh, with your ears as well as your eyes.
I think what it comes down to is like music in general can augment any of these things, and it's really like really cool to see the expression range. Particularly, I like humor. Stuff like back in like college, I was writing music for like the NES, and I wrote a theme song for my roommates at the time. For each one, got one, and one of our guys who I love him to death. He's kind of he's hard to describe. He's a goofy guy, and I love him to death. And like the pitch bending and things like that, like that was definitely used in those tracks for him. And he was like, I played it back to him, and he was like literally listening to this, and he's like, I don't want this to be my theme song. I was like, no, it's not a riff on you or anything. Like, yeah. But yeah, I'm really glad you asked about like humor in games and music. So.
Unfortunately, we are at the end of our time slot, and we will have to wrap it up here, sadly. It's been a lot of fun, but I'd like to first of all, thanks again to all of our wonderful panelists and guests who have come up here Everybody here either performed this year or last year, but I'd gladly have anybody come up here who has something interesting and fun to say. It's so much fun to put this kind of panel together. I want to just go through real quick and have everybody say one last sort of little hey, here's our band. Any last comment to the audience. I just kind of go on down the line.
So you can find Tetrimino on YouTube, Tetrimino VG Band, or you just Google Tetrimino, video game music of sorts. And yeah, you can expect us to start posting videos again. So.
Hi, I'm Lex the Lexicon Artist. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter as Lex the Con Artist. That's LEXTHE Con Artist. My website is thelexiconartist.com. That is the same as my YouTube. I'm basically everywhere. Find me on Spotify, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, basically everywhere. Some people have been able to find me on Bandcamp, which is really cool because I've been getting notifications of like, hey, someone bought your album. I'm like, cool, sweet. Find me. I'm actually dropping a single tomorrow. It is a posse cut. It is called 7 Evil Lexes, and it is a Scott Pilgrim tribute on the 8th anniversary of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. So please subscribe to my Bandcamp and make sure that you pick that up because it is fire. Also, it features Shavzilla right here. Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty star-studded lineup, so go to my Bandcamp and pick it up.
So we're Birthday the Band, and that is actually our Bandcamp URL. So Birthday the Band at .bandcamp.com, and we're on Spotify, Facebook, sometimes Twitter if we can remember, SoundCloud. Yeah, and I think that's about it.
Vectorhold.com. Everything's there. St. Demas High School football rules.
E.N.Cowell, C-O-W-E-L-L. I heard him repeating, you know what? Okay. All right. I'll let us have it. Yeah, that should take you to whatever you need in my music. It's been a few minutes since I've released something, but I have some new stuff coming out pretty soon, hopefully by the end of this year. And yeah, cool.
And the Runaway 4, if you don't know how to spell that, I don't know how you made it here. We've got some flyers left over on our merch table in the hallway there. If you want to go pick one of those up, but otherwise you can find us on the trifecta of social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at The Runaway 4, and we're on YouTube, we're on Bandcamp. You can go to therunaway4.com. We just released an album about a month ago, which is a double live recorded album, 2 40-minute sets, and all epic medleys.
And for all of you guys listening, either here or at home, we will have a link to the show, a link in the show notes for all of the artists that were here today and the track that they played, so you guys can catch up and re-listen to the tracks and go through their releases.
Also, I'm going to try to put up links to everybody's performances. Mag usually puts up videos, so Vector Hold was here 2017. Everybody else here was this year 2018. So you should be able to see every band play live, and they do a really great job with the recordings. So hope you can check those out.
We should put a link in the show notes for those too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So that's it for our panel, everybody. Hang out with us for a little bit to chat, but we got to break down. It's been a pleasure having everybody here. Thank you, everybody, for all the hard work getting here. Some of you had to travel from very far away. So thanks again. It's been a real treat. It's been a crazy weekend, but thanks again.